Hey, Adam here, and welcome back. For those that have been here a while, you might recognise Gaia's name, and that's because I've covered her disappearance in the past, but we're going to do something different today, and really dive deep and have a thorough look. Gaia's disappearance was actually the case that got me interested in reporting on disappearances in the first place. It received a lot of attention at the time, just a lot of reporting, and is still being reported on to this day. Even those reporting the news look quite confused at times when discussing this case on air, and you'll come to see why. These are all of the facts surrounding Gaia's disappearance that I'm aware of. Now let's zoom into the area in question. Gaia was 19 years old and disappeared on the 7th of November 2017 from the coastal town known as Swanage. The press picked up on Gaia's disappearance the day after it happened, so let's first have a look at the Express. Fears are growing for the safety of a teenage girl who has disappeared from her Dorset home, sparking a major police search. Gaia was last seen at 3:45 PM on Tuesday at an address where she had been staying in Swanage, Dorset. A family member called the police to report her missing when she failed to show up last night, triggering a major search. This major search included the use of helicopters, search dogs, law enforcement, search and rescue personnel, and a lot of volunteers as well. These searches failed to provide any clues as to where she might have gone. On the 9th, we learned that Gaia suffers from severe epilepsy and didn't have any medication with her at the time she went missing. Her sister made this statement, and I've paraphrased this a bit because, as you can imagine, Gaia's sister was understandably emotional and upset. This is completely out of character. Gaia would never have done this, and she has never done this before. She's very much a home bird. This whole thing doesn't make any sense. Another major concern was that because she didn't have her medication on hand, there was every possibility that she could have had a seizure and fallen unconscious somewhere. For anyone who knows someone with epilepsy, you'll know that this can be a pretty big deal. There's a member of my family who suffers from this, but touch wood, I think he has it mostly under control now. Right, so the police released this piece of CCTV footage, which you might be familiar with if you've seen my previous video on this. It's not clear exactly why Gaia was running. I've never seen any claims that Gaia was running away from someone, and the police have never stated that that was the case. For some more details on the search, let's have a look at the Bournemouth Echo. Hundreds of people have searched areas of Swanage, Poole and Bournemouth. Helpers have scoured car parks, cafes and the coastline. A spokesman of the search effort stated this: in total, 15 Coast Guard volunteers conducted a thorough search from Perivale Point and the Downs up the coast path and Undercliff to Durlston, and from there up to Anvil Point and to Dancing Ledge. This area will become very important later. After more than 6 hours, the teams were stood down by the police and have returned to base. We understand that members of the public are continuing to search this evening, and we urge you to take great care and please stay away from cliff edges and coast paths. These areas have been thoroughly searched today, and nobody wants to see further missing persons or injuries as a result of searching unfamiliar terrain in the dark. As the days went on, the police basically just made it known that they've been having a really hard time understanding where she might have gone. On the 12th of November 2017, there were some celebrities, including Russell Brand, who voiced their support to the family, encouraging others to help if they can. It was nice to see that actually, just people with that kind of audience size using their voice for good. Jonathan Ross also got involved and put out some retweets encouraging people to help out. There was a lot of press coverage on this, and the social media campaign was honestly massive. I was following it quite loosely at the time. It really did seem as though Gaia had just disappeared from the face of the earth, and just no clues at all were presenting themselves. And actually, just to reassure the public, Inspector Andy Edwards stated this: "We are doing everything possible to try and locate Gaia. We are doing everything we possibly can to support the family." Right, now something interesting happened on the 13th of November 2017, 6 days after the initial disappearance. Devon Live posted an article with the following title: "Man, 19 and woman, 71 arrested following disappearance of teen Gaia Pope." Detectives have arrested 2 people following Gaia's disappearance, with searches ongoing to locate her. Search warrants took place at 2 addresses in Swanage late this afternoon. The individuals in question, both from the Swanage area, were arrested and are currently assisting officers with inquiries. They are both known to Gaia. So just to be clear, at that time, the police had suspected that Gaia wasn't even alive anymore and that these two people may have been behind her disappearance. We're not quite there yet, but later we'll discover that the police released them and didn't believe that they had anything to do with it at all. Now let's hear from the senior investigating officer, Neil Devoto. This is what he had to say. It has almost been a week since Gaia's last confirmed sighting and she has not been seen or heard from since. We have looked through CCTV that covers the Swanage area, including transport hubs, and there is nothing to suggest that she has left the area. Her disappearance is completely out of character, and following our extensive inquiries, we sadly now believe that she may have come to harm. We have not yet found Gaia, and our searches will continue. Law enforcement didn't actually say why they believe that Gaia may have come in harm's way, but from what I'm reading, I can only imagine that because they hadn't seen her on CCTV and there was no evidence of her leaving, that started to become the primary suspicion. On the 14th, we learned some more information around the two individuals that were arrested. This was reported by The Sun. Neighbours say Gaia had recently been staying with her auntie in Swanage, just a few streets away from the two individuals who were arrested. In a TV interview before her arrest, the 71-year-old told the BBC how a distressed Gaia banged on her front door asking for help on the day that she disappeared. She said, "She looked upset, very upset. I am just so pleased because I gave her a cuddle and then she responded. Of course I want to find her and I have no idea where she is. She just seems to have disappeared." You'll note that the 71-year-old who was arrested stated that Gaia appeared to be visibly distressed on the day of her disappearance. We actually find out why that may have been the case. The Sun stated this. The teenager is believed to have been feeling anxious about a man getting released from prison who was jailed for assaulting her 2 years ago. She had been due to attend an appointment with her GP on the afternoon of November 7th, but it is thought that she never made it. Right, it's important to cover this part, and I'm going to do so very carefully. This wasn't just an assault, it was indecent assault, and Gaia didn't just suffer from epilepsy, but this event actually caused her to suffer from PTSD too. I'm going to read a brief statement on this from Gaia's family. After reporting that she had suffered indecent assault at the age of 16, Gaia's life was transformed by PTSD and worsening epilepsy. While Dorset police dropped Gaia's case against Connor Hayes, he was imprisoned for another offence of the same nature on someone else. She lived in fear of his release because he threatened to harm her and her family if she spoke out. In February 2017, soon after she learned Hayes was up for early release, Gaia finally broke down and was hospitalised under the Mental Health Act. The family also stated that the doctor's appointment on the day of disappearance was to ask for mental health support, and she had another appointment that day too to talk to the police about inappropriate harassment online. This information is absolutely vital here because it helps to understand where she was coming from and why she was distressed that day. Obviously, I can't say for certain or anything like that, but she very well could have been suffering from a really bad episode that day because of her PTSD. Right, the two arrested individuals were released on the 14th. A police spokeswoman stated that both individuals have now been released under investigation. You can only imagine that they just hadn't found anything to indicate that they had something to do with Gaia's disappearance. Moving on to the 15th now, Gaia's family released a statement and they state that they believed that she was still alive and they just urged people to keep looking. The family made the point that she may be being kept somewhere. Now, as far as I can tell, there was no physical evidence of this at all, but when someone disappears in this manner and you can't find a single clue or trace, you have to suspect this. And I fully support the family's efforts to keep this in the spotlight. Right, the 71-year-old woman who was arrested was one of the last people to see Gaia, and this is what The Guardian had reported. On Wednesday, the 71-year-old's ex-husband dismissed the notion that she or the 19-year-old could be involved in the disappearance. He said of her last encounter with Gaia, she was at home on her own. She gets a bang on the door at 3 p.m. She goes downstairs and Gaia is there, crying her eyes out. Less than an hour before her last confirmed sighting at 3:39 p.m. on the 7th, she was being driven by a family member when they stopped off for fuel. Gaia went into the garage to buy an ice cream at about 2:55 PM. You might notice that I'm not referring to those that were arrested by name, and I'm mostly doing that because as far as I can tell, the authorities never found any evidence to suggest that they'd done anything. It's too late now, mind you, because it was all over the news, but this is something that they might be associated with forever now, and the 19-year-old was an aspiring actor. It's difficult to really know how to handle that, but I didn't want to further propagate the idea of their involvement if the police have cleared them. On the 16th, we actually learned some more details about this interaction with the 71-year-old. This was reported by The Sun. Gaia disappeared after turning up at the home of her friend's grandmother in a distressed and agitated state. Gaia then started to remove items of clothing in front of the 71-year-old, telling her, "I'm too hot." The ex-husband, retelling the event, said Gaia went in and stripped off the top half of her clothes down to her bra. She was really concerned and managed to persuade Gaia to put the clothes back on, but Gaia left without her coat. Gaia said she needed to go and find one of her old school friends. Now, the neighbours stated that they heard the pair having an altercation on the day she went missing, but unfortunately this was never expanded upon. However, because Gaia was pounding on the door initially, I can see why that would be taken as an altercation without any further information or context. It was also stated that when the door was answered, Gaia slid down the door and sat for a moment. The friend's mother did say it didn't appear to be anything to do with epilepsy, but more to do with her current state. From what I can understand here, the same day that they were arrested, forensic teams and sniffer dogs entered the home. The fact that they were then released probably indicates that nothing at all was found to suggest that they'd done anything here. Though they were released under investigation, so it's an avenue that the police weren't ready to give up on yet. Just for clarity, I wanted to add this point about Gaia's interaction with the person in question. This was stated by the ex-husband and reported by the Express. She had taken Gaia in when she called at her home, upset and crying, only to see her run away without her coat. Gaia ran out the front door with no coat on a freezing night and disappeared into fresh air. If she had an epileptic fit on a night like that, she wouldn't have survived. There are only two possible scenarios. Either she went voluntarily with somebody, or somebody pulled her into a car. I also wanted to make it clear, because I haven't mentioned this yet, the two people that were arrested didn't live together. The 71-year-old grandmother lived with her son, who was 49, and the 19-year-old grandson lived separately with his own mother. It was either down the same street or at least very close. Gaia and the 19-year-old were good friends, and from what I understand, Gaia was close to that family, or at least knew them and got on with them well. Now let's have a look at The Guardian, because an important discovery was made on the 16th. Hopes were fading for Gaia Pope after a woman's clothes were found in a field close to the seaside town where she vanished 9 days ago, and a third person was arrested. Detectives had not established who the clothes belonged to, but said they were similar to some of those Gaia was wearing when she disappeared. The arrested man was the son of the grandmother and uncle of the 19-year-old earlier arrested. The ex-husband then stated that his son was 110% innocent. The clothes were found at 10:28 AM by a member of the public in an area of open land north of the coastal path. The field where the clothes were found is just inland from a beauty spot called Dancing Ledge on the Jurassic Coast. It is southwest of Swanage town centre and around 1.5 miles due south of Langton Matravers. Just important to note here is that while at the time they hadn't confirmed that the clothes belonged to Gaia, we know that they were in fact Gaia's clothes. Now let's have a look at the BBC, who included a statement from Neil Devoto. Here's what was said. Following the discovery of these items of clothing, a full and thorough search will now take place in the field and surrounding area. We have seized the clothing and investigations will now be carried out to identify who they belong to. The Times also highlighted a couple of key points, and I quote, "Police have searched the ex-husband's home and seized his car. He said that he had shown officers his bank card in an effort to prove that he had been working in the Weymouth area when she disappeared." And in regards to the 19-year-old, her cousin Mariana said, "He and Gaia were friends. They went to school together. I can't believe he has any reason to hurt her." It seems as though the ex-husband was never arrested or anything like that, so I can only assume that law enforcement were able to confirm that he wasn't in the area on the day in question. Now, the 49-year-old, the Jersey Evening Post had this to say. The third person to be arrested, a 49-year-old man, has been released under investigation by Dorset police. So once more, while they suspected this particular family for reasons that haven't been explicitly stated, it appears that they couldn't find any evidence to make it stick. I'm not sure if it was because the grandmother was one of the last people to see Gaia, and obviously she had took her coat off at the home. Whatever the case may be though, it really does seem like there was a lot of confusion present, and it looks like no one was really sure what was happening. Even when they discovered the clothes on the coastal path, just the way it reads from these various sources, that seemed to blindside everyone too. I found another interesting piece of information in regards to the arrested and released 49-year-old. The ex-husband said, "They haven't had any luck with the grandmother nor the grandson. Now they want him. When they first spoke to him, he said, 'Here's my phone, here's my bank card. Do you want to search my car?' He has nothing to hide." Just another note on the clothes actually, because I want to be specific. It looks to have been all of her clothing items that they'd found, including her shoes. I quote, "Forensic officers at the search site could later be seen retrieving a white trainer which was similar to those Gaia was wearing when she disappeared." It's important we highlight something now because we're at an important juncture in Gaia's disappearance. As has been stated, the point at which they found the clothing was now the main focus point of the search. In that very location, they had helicopters with thermal imaging technology flying overhead. They had professional search dog teams on the ground, as well as the many ground searchers, and they were all over this area. This was no small search by any means, and has been described repeatedly as a mass search. Now let's move forward 2 days onto the 18th. This is a very important date because this is when Gaia's body was found, and things are about to get bizarre. Let's have a look at the Independent. Police searching for Gaia Pope have found a body near Swanage, which detectives said they are confident is the missing teenager. Dorset police said the discovery was made by specialist search teams near a coastal path and field where the items of the 19-year-old's clothing were found this week. Detective Superintendent Paul Kessel said that the circumstances of her passing remain unexplained. Right, on to the 19th. We actually get a couple of interesting statements as well as some very unusual information. Let's have a look at the Daily Mail. Earlier this week, Gaia's family criticised Dorset police, saying they were being kept in the dark by the force. They said they were not told of the arrest of the 3 individuals in connection with Gaia, and had only heard of them through social media. A family friend told The Times, "We don't understand what the police are doing. They say someone has been arrested on suspicion of bringing harm to Gaia, and then in the next sentence, they say that they are hopeful Gaia will be found alive and well. We also know from what people have told us that they have been knocking on doors asking people if they have seen a couple, a man with heavy tattoos and a woman with lots of jewellery acting suspiciously." I did say earlier that everyone seems so confused in this disappearance, and you can see why, because all of the information doesn't gel very well together and it isn't making sense. Just to reiterate that point, let's get bizarre. On Thursday, police discovered items of clothing strewn in a field 200 yards from a 70-foot cliff top. Last night, police said that Gaia's family confirmed they match clothes worn by Gaia. There were fears the clothes may have been dumped there at some point over the last few days. The area was searched multiple times by police, coast guards and volunteers in the days after Gaia disappeared, but on each occasion nothing was found. Police and coast guards first searched the cliff top between Anvil Point and Dancing Ledge near Swanage the day after Gaia went missing, and according to a spreadsheet of search locations on the Find Gaia Facebook page, the area of Priest's Way next to the field where the clothing was found was scoured by volunteers on November 9. So, the place where Gaia's clothing was found had already been searched multiple times, and then 2 days afterwards, Gaia's body appears a short distance away near a coastal path. It's hard to imagine that a body was missed so close to the clothing, so not only were Gaia's clothes placed there, but her body seems to have been potentially placed there after the fact as well. The question is, how exactly was she placed there? It seems to me there are a couple of possibilities here. Firstly, as has been stated, this was a cold time and Gaia had left her coat at the home of the arrested woman. It could be that Gaia left the town and headed up into this remote area and had then suffered from hypothermia at some stage, and then followed by paradoxical undressing, and then she fell there. However, I found that hard to believe because it becomes very difficult to explain away how she managed to evade the searchers for all of that time. especially once they'd discovered the clothing. There were helicopters overhead with thermal imaging equipment. If there's something on the ground producing heat, you're not going to miss it. In addition to that, how in the world did the dogs miss her scent in this scenario? It's very odd. The second hypothesis here has got to be third-party involvement. Now, to be clear, I'm not sure what this may have looked like either. There was no evidence of a vehicle being near the location she was found, and you'd expect to see that. Could someone have carried her there? That would also have been difficult, especially with thousands of people in the area. How did she get there without being discovered? This is something I've always struggled with in this disappearance. Now, let's get bizarre again. Why not? This was reported by The Guardian still on the 19th of November 2017. The teenager, Gaia Pope, whose body was found 11 days after she went missing from a seaside town, had not suffered any injuries that would suggest foul play, detectives have said. A post-mortem has taken place, but the cause of passing may not be known for some time as toxicology and other tests are being carried out. Specifically, Paul Kessel stated this: "The post-mortem examination has not identified any injuries to suggest any other person was involved in her passing." So what we can glean here is that Gaia passed away without any real injuries to speak of. So what happened? I said a minute ago that the second hypothesis may have been as a result of third-party involvement, but there was absolutely no evidence of that. The first hypothesis I'd mentioned about evading the searchers also seems equally unlikely too, just for different reasons. I also just wanted to clarify that on the 20th of November 2017, law enforcement clarified that the 3 earlier arrested would face no further action, and they themselves thought about bringing forward their own lawsuits against the police. Things like this quickly get out of hand, and that's why I've refused to name them throughout this, because mud sticks. And as said, it's already too late, but their names will always be associated with this now in some way. Anyway, here's another piece of interesting information that was reported by the Daily Mail. Gaia's clothes and body were eventually found in a location thought to be one of her known haunts, one said to have been repeatedly searched. Her cousin, Mariana, stated, "It should not have taken 11 days to find her so close, and we need to know why." She's referring to the body being so close to the clothing, and honestly, she raised a very good question. There has never been a great explanation given as to why it took so long to find her, especially in this area that had been searched many times over. I did find a statement from the authorities and reported by the Daily Mail. The police defended its searches, saying it had deployed significant resources which were intelligence-led and directed by specially trained police search advisors. The area where Gaia was found was deep within very thick gorse and undergrowth, close to a cliff edge. This would have made it incredibly difficult for even the helicopter to see her using high-tech thermal imaging. It also required the expertise of specialist recovery officers to reach her. Okay, so if it required that kind of expertise, then how did she get there in the first place? Once hypothermia sets in, a person becomes very groggy, slow-moving, confused, and yet this place apparently required specialists to get to. Do you think that was ever questioned? Nope. Maybe she fell? Would you have expected injuries in that case? I'm not sure. Now we need to move to February of 2018 because there were no real updates to speak of until that time. Right, so let's have a look at The Guardian, where we find out more information from the inquest. Gaia Pope, the Dorset teenager whose disappearance sparked a high-profile police inquiry, passed away as a result of hypothermia, an inquest has heard. The coroner's officer, Andrew Lord, said a pathologist, Dr. Russell Delaney, was initially unable to establish a cause of passing, but later determined that she had passed away as a result of hypothermia. The family, however, still wanted answers and were demanding to know why it took 11 days to find her. You can see why they weren't happy here. Her clothes being found in an area searched many times, and then Guy's body was found 2 days later not far away. Yeah, I think most of us would have questions about that. Mariana seemed to have some particularly tough questions that she wanted answers to. Here's what she said on the 6th of May 2018. "The police talked a good game. They told us they had dogs out and helicopters up with thermal imaging equipment so sensitive it could pick up a signal from a body even up to 48 hours after passing. One of the officers said to me, if she was out there, we'd have found her. When she was eventually found, I could not believe it. Every relative and close friend of Gaia who asked where she might go would have put Priest's Way at number 1 on the list. If there were helicopters flying overhead, how did they not see her, on foot even, if they stuck to the path, they would have seen her if they were looking. I think Mariana raised some excellent points there, to be honest, and while the family may have had the view that the police just did a terrible job, I think it's well worth considering the idea that she wasn't actually there at the time of searching. I must admit, I find it very difficult to believe that they could have simply missed her there with the dogs out and the helicopters up. The dogs aren't relying on their sight here like we are. They can follow a scent, and any search dog handler will tell you that if the scent was there, the dogs would have found her. Only they didn't, and that never happened. It's very odd, and something just doesn't quite sit right in this disappearance. A full year on from the disappearance now, on the 7th of November 2018, the family stated that they still know very little more than Gaia had passed away as a result of hypothermia. The police investigation was also being investigated by watchdogs, but honestly, it has always felt like confusion has surrounded Gaia's disappearance since it happened. That really is the best way of putting it. No one really knows what happened here. As said a few times now, even the discovery of the clothes and of her body is odd and hard to make sense of. The police made a lot of mistakes initially investigating that family that we've spoken about, presumably because nothing else was making sense here. Just some other notes. Connor Hayes, the person who Gaia accused of indecent assault, was actually jailed again for the exact same crime in December of 2018, against someone else obviously. Honestly, if someone keeps reoffending in the exact same way every time, actually let's not go there. On the 18th of October 2019, the family were again frustrated because the investigation over the police investigation was repeatedly breaking its own deadlines with little explanation. I actually found a statement made by the family. Every deadline we have been given has been broken with little explanation, while decisions are made without us behind closed doors. Even the monthly updates we were promised, we have had to chase for. Now, less than 4 weeks before it was due to resume, we are told that the inquest will be postponed yet again. We have always maintained that what happened to Gaia is a matter not just of our private grief, but one of public concern. I fully agree with that statement. On the 16th of September 2020, the family stated this at a pre-inquest hearing. Vital questions about Gaia's passing and the adequacy of local support services remain unanswered. We know that there are significant gaps in the evidence. The one thing we want more than for this to be over is for this to be effective and prevent future harm. The last update that I could find was from the end of January 2021, and the inquest seems to have been pushed back because of the current events that we're all dealing with at the minute. So, the family haven't given up, which is good, and I hope that they get the answers that they deserve. This has been all of the facts surrounding Gaia's disappearance that I am personally aware of. I'll keep an eye on this one, and as said, I can only hope that the inquest provides some meaningful conclusions or updates to the family. I'm going to end this one here and hand it over to you for thoughts in the comments below. Please do give the video a thumbs up if you think I've done a good job with the reporting, or a thumbs down if you don't. I'm just looking for your honest opinion. I'd also just like to say thank you for watching, and a big thank you to the patrons as well. I appreciate your support very much. I hope that you've had a great day or evening depending on where you are. Be safe guys, and I'll see you next time. Peace.